rely on their memory. And then, if they came up with a song on this one particular Sunday, and then they're back on the plantations, slaving away on Monday through Friday through Saturday, the following Sunday, when they would get back together at that city square, which later became dubbed Congo Square. They'd bring the conga drums and play their instruments in this square. Today, that square is still there in New Orleans. When they would get together the following Sunday, and they would try to play the song they played last Sunday, they would have to rely on their memory. And it would never be played exactly the same way. Because part of the reason they may have forgotten over the period of that 1 week exactly what notes they played, what tempo, etc., that they played the previous Sunday. Also, it depended upon how they felt. If they were beaten that week, if they were sold, if their wife was raped, then they might have a different feeling when they got back together that Sunday. It might be more of a melancholy feeling. So they might play that same song with a melancholy feel to it. If they had a light week, the song might have a happier lilt. It might be a little faster. It might be more major oriented as opposed to minor oriented. And that was the beginning of what was known as jazz, the art of improvisation, to be able to create something on the spot. If you were singing a song and you couldn't remember the words, exactly what rhymed last week, you make up another word real quick to catch that rhyme, just to make it rhyme. So you were constantly thinking about things to put in there. That was the beginning of improvisation. That was jazz. So it came out of things like the field holler, where slaves working on the plantations would sing. And as long as they were singing, they were more productive in their work. So the slave masters did not mind that the slaves sang. But what the slave masters did not know were the slaves were singing to each other. And they were passing messages along to each other. You know, they would have something called a call and response, where one slave would call out something and the other slaves would respond. And often it was plotting an escape, what they were going to do. This is very prevalent during the time of the Underground Railroad and on various plantations around this country, where they would have these call and response or field hollers. And they would make up things. They would get together in the city square and do the same thing, basically, as make up their songs. That was the beginning of jazz. And eventually, you had the same kind of music in the black churches in this country. The music was identical to jazz or blues. The only thing that separated it were the lyrics, the words. One was secular or worldly, and the other was religious or spiritual. And that was the difference between, say, gospel and blues. We have, for example, a song, I'll demonstrate that in a second, a song like, how many of y'all are familiar with Just a Closer Walk with Me? You know that one? How many of y'all sing? Come on now. We're a nice little group. I need some audience participation. All right? Come on, let me get a couple volunteers up here to sing with me. Let's not all jump at once. I don't hear anybody. Okay? Now, in many of the, Just Supposed to Walk With Me came later in time, but I'm just giving you like a little demonstration of it. In many of the white churches, the song would be played something like, just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee. rhythms, the drive, and things like that that came out of the slaves and that culture, you would hear it more syncopated, with more of a rhythmic feel. In the black churches, whites were more known for melody. Melody was a big thing, okay, in Western music. In African music, just like in Latin music, melody is important, but the most important thing is the beat, the rhythm. And you have to understand, in Africa, a lot of things were communicated with beats on a drum from village to village. They would communicate if a war was going to happen. You play the war drums. A marriage was going to happen. You play the ceremonial drums. So people would talk from village to village by how they played. Different rhythms meant different things. Different beats meant different things. They communicated by drum. So rhythm was very, very important. There were not drums in early European music. It was more melody. And the melodies that were given to us by our European music masters, like the ones I mentioned, Bach and Beethoven, etc., you could only play what they wrote on the paper as written. You were not allowed to interpret it any other way than how Beethoven designated on that paper. If he said crescendo, you crescendo. If he said decrescendo, you decrescendo. You did not put your own spin on what was written. So if I were to play this song, which you'll recognize, of course, and this lady here, Sarah, was to play this song, or somebody in California or somebody in Japan would play the song, and you could not see us playing it, you would not be able to identify, oh, that's Sarah playing that song, or that's Daryl, or that's so-and-so, because each of us has to interpret it the same way. So you all have heard something like, right, all familiar with that, right? Anybody know the name of that?
For Elise.
For Elise. And who's it by? Come on now. It's by Ludwig van Beethoven. What does it mean?
For Elise.
For Elise. Okay, Elise is like a German translation for Lisa. Elise was Beethoven's mistress. Oh. Yeah. Now, you really want me to shock you? Beethoven died from syphilis and gonorrhea. Yes. Yeah, he did. He went deaf and blind. Okay? And but anyway, that English translation is for Lisa, for Elise in German. And like I said, no matter who plays that song, it's going to sound alike. Whereby if you take Just a Closer Walk with Me, or any jazz or blues songs, if Frank Sinatra sings it, if Ella Fitzgerald sings it, if Elvis Presley sings it, each one is going to have their own interpretation of it, because you are allowed to take those songs and express yourself. So, like I said, in most of the white churches, you would hear, just a closer walk with thee. Now, in a lot of the black churches, it would be syncopated. It would have kind of a drive to it, like a... So that was the ability to take that song and improvise upon it. All right? And that's what you were allowed to do in black.